we had unemployment increase to 6.9%. So economists are like, what the hell is happening here? We're in a recession. So what do? Do we decrease rate to help with the people because we're worried about the recession? We need to have more money in the market because unemployment, people need a little bit of a break. Or are they concerned about inflation? Because in reality, that 1.7 is not 1.7. Inflation is actually increasing. So what are they going to do with the Bank of Canada?
Hello and welcome back to the DC Talks podcast with David Chinelli. I'm your gracious host, Agent 00 Owen and I. We're back at the DC headquarters to catch up on all things real estate, everything that's going on in the market, get some thoughts of what DC thinks is happening and what he's seeing.
What I think is happening, or it's actually
what's currently happening and what's going to be what's coming down the pike in the summer months and the sentiment amongst buyers and sellers. But before we get started, DC, how you doing? Good to see you, looking good. Looking good so far.
Not bad yourself, brother?
Hey, it's good to wear like a summer shirt.
Yeah.
I've been
the weather's warming up.
Exactly. It's been like bipolar a little bit. Sometimes it feels
just like the market.
Exactly. Let's get into it. How's the market, man?
It's bipolar. I'll tell you that. Yeah, it's. I wouldn't say. We always say when we're putting it on the universe, we always say that too, right? And when you're talking things, you have to be careful what you're saying. We're talking with our buyers because, sometimes the market's obviously it's slow. There are houses still selling, right? But it's bipolar. We can't always figure out what is selling. Like it's been erratic. That's the best thing I can say, right? Are things still selling? Yeah. Do we know which one's going to sell? No. Like houses all have to look great. They all have to present well. They all have to be priced really aggressive, really nice. But we still have listings that are fulfill all those criteria. Like if I don't put forth a listing that doesn't look good, I think you've seen my listings, right? And we have some that are just sitting there, right?
Staging, everything's always on point.
So like this year, and like yesterday was, we had a deal which we had listed the property. We'd listed before for over 1.2. My guys want to get close to 1.2. We understood that the market's changed. And they have two little ones. So we decided, let's just try the bidding war thing, listed $999 because they wanted to move, right? They haven't bought anything. Thank God they haven't bought anything. And they wanted to move, but we listed $999, got a couple of offers, obviously got above asking. Home inspection went well. These guys were pre-approved. All of a sudden, yesterday was the day that we were supposed to firm up this deal and they couldn't get financing. And we're seeing that a lot. What I'm always telling my buyers and my sellers is like, put a financing condition in. When the market was ridiculously hot, it was hot also because the lenders were also a little bit easier to get money from and to lend. Now we're in this precarious situation where it's also affecting the market because you may be qualified, right? But then they're looking, the rates are increasing, believe it or not. And it's harder and harder to get a mortgage and get money. And there might be something in your profile, which you may not have realized can affect your profile, and it's affecting your mortgage. So for example, these guys, when I was talking to their agent, again, they're well approved, like for the number even above this, they're pre-approved for. When it came to the mortgage, there was an obligation which they didn't foresee was going to be an issue. And this has happened before. Like when you talk to your mortgage broker, disclose everything. Don't think, well, this might not show up in a credit report. It's better to tell your mortgage agent now or your mortgage specialist because you don't want to be surprised like this because they're going to approve you for a mortgage. And then you don't want to be on the 11th hour and all of a sudden have this come on their plane going, uh-oh, what is this? So in this kind of situation, it affected them that they had to basically come up $100,000 to close the property. So technically, everybody can get a mortgage. I say that, right? But they have to come up with $100,000 in order to bridge the amount that they needed because they didn't have this financial obligation, wasn't part of the portfolio when they went to their mortgage specialist at BMO. So this is a problem, right? So my clients are freaking out. I'm like, can we get a letter? Can we get something showing that these guys actually can't approve for the mortgage? Again, they're not approved for the mortgage. I'm like, it doesn't work like that. In our market, when we write the conditions in there, whether all the conditions say something in there, and there's a line in all the conditions which you have to be aware of. It says this is for the buyer's sole discretion. Again, anybody can get a mortgage. But if you're getting 100% like interest on it, you're going to go bankrupt in like 3 days. Like that's not a suitable mortgage. So that's why we put that in there, because again, technically you can get a mortgage, because if you got a letter like, yeah, they're approved, but they have to come up with this and they can't get it. So technically they're approved for a mortgage, just not the amount that they said they can get. So that's where it becomes a little bit of a gray area, right? So, and that's kind of situation that happened. Now, these guys, I believe, are legit. That's the problem. There's no way of saying, oh, you got to prove it to me. In the past, I guess they could have a letter, but honestly, you go to a bank, you say, write me a letter saying I don't approve this mortgage. They'll write you a letter. It doesn't really hold water, right? Like, I'll be honest with you. But we're also seeing in the market is people backing away because they've changed their mind.
Who's changed their mind? Like the buyers or the sellers?
So we had another one. Like, first off, I've never signed so many mutual releases probably in my career, right? Then I've signed. I've already had 3 mutual releases this year. And I think of all the previous years and like combined weren't like 3, maybe 4. What a mutual release is, if you have a conditional deal. So you and so the buyer and the seller come together and they agree to sell property, right? Both sides are agreed. Okay, on this date, this is the amount of money that's going to be exchanged. In the agreement of purchase and sale, there will be conditions, right? So your deposit has to be within 24 hours. It needs to be liquid. It's about 5% of the purchase price. So to make things easy, say you buy a property for $1 million, they're saying within $50,000 is due within 24 hours to make that officially binding, right? Technically, you're bound by seal when you sign it, but to make it official, you have to put money down, right? So this $50,000 will stay in the listing brokerage's trust account, right? And it stays there until 2 things happen. 1, you agree to all the conditions to remove the conditions, like we said before. And the second way is, and that becomes part of your down payment. So if you put 5% down, if you put 20% down on closing, you have to come up with that additional 15%. Make sense? What we're seeing now is the second part is like, well, it stays in trust, right? If you have conditions, which majority of offers have conditions nowadays, if the buyer's not satisfied with the home inspection, with status certificate review, whatever condition it is, they can technically back away from the deal and get that $50,000 back without deduction. So there's no skin in the game, right? You have basically a week, 5 business days to get your money back. And wait a second. And what happened was, before you get into that, unless you want to get into it, but what happened was we had a conditional sale. We've already done our own home inspection. The property, this is in Brampton. And Brampton, it's the Wild West out there. Like, it's ridiculous out there right now. Buyers are just kind of like, they're giving lowball offers. They're doing things which aren't good, right? They're giving multiple offers to people. They're trying to lowball. So we agreed to a price, which was a fair price, which was below market value, in my opinion, because we should be selling for a little bit higher. But my clients are like, okay, fine, we'll do this. We just want to move on, right? The only condition they had was a home inspection. Now, this is the bullshit part of this, is like, we already did the home inspection. I'm like, we have a home inspection. They're like, yeah, we want to do our own. Okay, fine.
Well, what does their own look like? Does that involve being a professional? Is it them?
So what involves is like, they bring their own home inspector, right? And they will do their own home inspection. So they did their own home inspection. The condition was due up on the Monday. The Friday, the agent calls me, he's joking around. He's like, hey man, everything's good. Like, do the sellers want to part with the barbecue? I wish we would open the garage, but now they want the barbecue. I'm like, well, let's firm up this deal and we'll talk about the barbecue. Maybe we'll throw it in.
And the barbecue, is it built into the ground?
No. It was a move. It was in the garage. They moved it from the backyard into the garage. So the guy's joking with me. So we're thinking everything's good, right? Monday comes, he goes, we need to get a deal. We need to sign a mutual release. So a mutual release is that the both parties and their broker of records have to sign this agreement saying you will get your money back without deduction. And the deal goes, and the house goes back on the market before the deadline. And this is Friday. The Friday's where the conversation was good. Monday is the cutoff date, right? Yeah. So it's usually 5 business days, right? So Monday rolls around. He says, we have to sign this mutual release. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you only had a conditional home inspection. We only accepted your conditional home inspection because we did our own home inspection. There's nothing wrong with the house.
You thought this was a formality, pretty much, like with their own home.
Of course. You assume, because and even our home inspector said there's nothing wrong. There's small things. So let me, as a disclaimer, guys, every single property has issues. Doesn't matter what it is. There's always small fixes you need to do. When you're doing a home inspection by a home inspection professional, what they're doing is first, they're trying to flag big ticket items, right? That's going to cost you a lot of money to fix. And if that situation happens, we talked about this before, there's 4 options, right? One, you can just say, listen, we got a good deal on this property. We're just going to take the property as is. We understood those walking through. That's why we got this price on the home, because we knew about these red flags. The second thing is they said, of course, you can back away from the deal, get your money back. The third thing is you can ask the seller to fix the issues. Now, if they're small issues, fine. If they're big issues, I do not recommend that, because they're never going to do it to the quality in which you probably would do yourself or hire your own person to do. So that comes up with the fourth option, which is you negotiate a little bit on price, right? And usually the buyer will get like 30 to 40% of the replacement cost of this big ticket item. So that's the options. Then there's small things. Again, you can always ask the seller cake. Like one time I had to go in for the property in Milton. The guy's like, the toilets were loose. So I went on and did the toilets. He's like, the attic didn't have the weather stripping. It was $12. So I did the weather stripping. I would sit to my clients, they're laughing. They're like, the tap was loose. I used my Allen key and I tied up. They're like, there's small things. He even said to me, he's like, well, the light was hanging in the basement downstairs. So I paid $20. I bought a $20 light, and I said, I fixed my own lights. My cousins were all electricians. My brother worked when I worked in electrical. Like, to replace lights it's easy, right? So $20 fix. So everything worked out. So for me personally, it was like $100. And I saved the deal by doing, I'm like, yeah, I'll fix those. And I'll give you proof that I'll fix these. Anyway, so we knew there was no big ticket items. So I'm like, so when he calls me on Monday, I'm like, what are you backing away from? He's like, well, there's certain things that popped up in the home inspection. This is happening left and right, guys. This is not just me. Like, he's like, there's things that are happening in the home inspection that we weren't happy with. I'm like, really? What were those things that you were not happy with? And he's like, let me get back to you. I'm like, he goes, but it's on the buyer's sole discretion of what happens. And I'm like, asshole, like, that's not what that clause is for. If you told me on that, like, I'll be honest, if you told me that on financing, like, we can't do anything on financing, I can't prove it. But at least the home inspection's black and white. I'm like, if you don't actually have issues on the property, you are not negotiating in good faith. That means your guys just backed away from it, and which we can come after you. So you better find something of the issues that they have. Otherwise, we're coming after you. And we're like almost strong arming, like, I'm not a dick like that, but you're dicking around my clients. And like, it's been over a week now, because it was like the
money's already been submitted and everything.
Everything's been done, right? And like, who knows why these guys backed away. And he came back. He's like, well, they weren't happy with the grading in the backyard. So grading in the backyard. So the house should be sloping away. The grading means like how the soil is sitting away from the home. If it goes into the home like this, that means like the potential water can sit against the wall and cause leaks in the very future, right? And I'm like, so it's like, so you get soil and you build it up. It's $100 fix, right? But the whole backyard is sloping, right, to the front of the house. Like, and I'm like, that's the nature of the houses. You can't actually change the slope going like this, so it was a bullshit answer. And I'm like, really? I'm like, you saw that? I'm like, first of all, if it was a grading issue that you're saying, the soil issue, that's $100 fix. Yeah, but then he gives me another excuse. Yeah, there was a crack in the foundation. I'm like, and it looks like it was kind of fixed. And I was like, first of all, it was minor. It was a superficial crack. And I'm like, it's not even anything. It's like, and he's like, and it could lead to leaks in the future. I'm like, it's not even penetrating the hole. Like, it's nothing. It was a joke. And I'm like, we couldn't even see a crack, to the point that our inspector was like, it's nothing. Like, it was hilarious. And my guys have never had any floods or anything in Yorkshire. And the third thing, he goes, and there's no fans in the bathrooms. It was built in the 80s. They didn't do fans in the bathrooms. Again, it's a cheap fix. Oh my God. Like, I don't even, like, if you're spending $1,000 to put a fan in, like, that's way expensive. You get an electrician, especially the one on the second floor, you go right through the attic, you poke a hole through, you put a channel, and the other one was in the basement, which doesn't really, bless you. But anyway, these were kinds of their answers. And again, like, what do you say? Like, they were coming up with answers. They were not really red flags. So they're all fixable. They weren't even orange. They're white flags, in my opinion. They weren't even orange. There was no even color to them. So I don't know. And honestly, what do you do, right? We can't force somebody to purchase because we were like they had quote unquote issues they didn't like. And I was like, so it's on their sole discretion. They came up with excuses. And we're seeing this. This is the market we're in.
So a couple of things. Did your guy Tony do the home inspections? Because
He doesn't do pre-inspections.
he doesn't do pre-inspections.
No.
Okay, gosh.
He doesn't like doing pre-inspections. So the problem with my home inspector, Tony, is like he's very, very meticulous and he might scare buyers off. So buyers are okay.
Yeah. If he's doing the home inspections, like he's so
he doesn't like
he's an expert. Like, why people doubting his work like this?
No, so it's like, so in the pre-inspection stuff too, we just, we get a company to do it. And like the good thing is we always get reputable companies to do it because he doesn't like doing them. We've had to try him a couple times. He's like, I'm not doing that anymore because he was so nitpicky. My sellers are like, I'm not using that report. And and I was like, because he pulls in everything, right? But he was like, well, I'm just showing the people like, these aren't red flags, but his home inspection is a lot bigger than like a regular company. So there's other companies that are big name companies. The reason why I use them too is like, if you don't believe me, fine. You can call the company and talk to their inspector, and you can pay a fee and it's like get your own. Like there's like, for example, like there's Carson Dunlop. I think it's like $100 or $200 to talk to their inspector. It's something crazy, right? And it's already been done. The funny thing is they're more expensive than Tony, it's just, but sometimes when you're doing a sale, like the other problem I had with Tony was that when I had his, he's a smaller guy and that's why he loves his job and he's a sole proprietor, but he doesn't have the name necessarily as some of these companies have been around for hundreds of years. Even though he's better than them, they have a name. See how that works?
The brand.
So
is
exactly.
stronger.
So when I listen to Etobicoke, you have to have the brand of pre-inspection. That's how the buyers feel comfortable. And I use for example, in Carson Dunlop here in Etobicoke, you almost have to have, like, they're considered the gold standard here in Etobicoke, and that's what a lot of people use. There are other companies. I'm just using them as an example. But if you have a Carson Dunlop home inspection, people feel better about themselves. Because when I had Tony, they're like, well, who's this Tony guy? And I'm like, call him. Like, he knows more than all these other inspectors combined. But some people just don't have that warm, fuzzy feeling inside.
So let's go back a little bit to the pre-approval that you spoke about.
Yeah.
Right? In prior episodes, you've always advocated for people to get a pre-approval. This is the first thing you see what you qualify for.
Oh, yeah.
And everything. So with this changing, the way it's changing right now, how much confidence should people still have in being able to get a pre-approval? Because if this is a legitimate way to get money and to get financing, if there's a 50-50 chance of you not...
It's not a 50-50 chance. So, and I'm sorry, hopefully I didn't mislead you in that kind of sense. So when you're going for pre-approval, what I was saying to you, if you do this and you give up all your obligations, if you are honest with your mortgage specialist, your mortgage broker, whoever it is, then your pre-approval makes sense. And then you don't have to worry about it.
So it's the accuracy of the information you provide.
Correct.
Which when doing further due diligence, you're like, hey, on paper and pre-approval, you're qualifying for like 600,000.
Yes.
But after more inspection, you're actually qualifying for 300K.
That's what can happen. If you hide stuff, right? Then yeah, 100%. So things they'll ask you on a mortgage, like, say, what are your obligations? What do you owe? Like, what's on your car? And they'll give you a number. So a mortgage broker will type it in there. How much do you owe? Like, send your, notice of assessment for the last couple of years. They'll look at those. Do you have any like student debts? Do you have any other debts you're not telling me about? Like liens, loans, any kind of thing that you think. It's always, if you don't disclose some of those, you'll get bit in the ass. Like, you cannot hide from the bureau. I'm sorry, when they pull your credit at that point, because when you're getting a pre-approval, the mortgage specialist will put everything together based on what you tell them. And they'll ask for documents, right? They'll ask for like how much you earn, your notice of assessment, like I said before. They'll check your credit report, all that kind of stuff, right? But when they're doing, that's more of a soft stuff. So you have a pre-approval, they'll give you some options. But they're not doing a hard approval, right? Because they can't continue to always do a hard approval. A hard approval will affect your credit, right? So in this kind of situation, when you're trying to get a mortgage, that's when they'll run your numbers through all the credits.
So the pre-approval you've been talking about is more like a softer approval.
Yes.
Just to get a gauge of how much you could possibly qualify for.
Right.
Is that am I on the right path?
The way that I understand it is 100% correct, right? Yeah.
And these individuals that you were helping,
I wasn't helping. This wasn't. So remember, I was on the sell side. These guys were on the buy side. So talking with a realtor, this is what happened to them. And it only happened to us one time. And Anna Fucci was my realtor. She called me one day and like we had went in firm. This is back, I think 2016, 2017 with a couple clients of mine. And they didn't qualify because they didn't give her all the information. So we almost risked not being able to close. But thank God we had somebody step up and they co-signed. They were able to, like a parent co-sign or a couple parents to co-sign, and they're able to figure that out, right? That was one of the options they could do. But if you have a parent doesn't co-sign or you don't have somebody and you don't give all that information and you purchase, that's why they always tell you don't go in firm, because they're not doing the hard approval list, right? So what happens is you'll get a pre-approval. They'll give you numbers based on the information you've given them, and they'll ask you for documents to verify all that. But again, if there's something that you forgot about, they're not going to know until they do that hard check. And you can't keep doing hard checks, because every time you do a hard check, it dings your credit and then you'll earn less and less. So that's why and I keep saying that, I've said this in my videos before. I've said this over and over again. You have to be honest. You have to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, walk me through the mindset of someone having the presence of mind to still go for what they're trying to get, which is like a house. This is a major, one of the biggest purchases you'll ever make in your life. What makes them hold back certain information?
I don't think it's...
Is it like they're forgetting something?
Yes, I'm saying I don't think it's devious in any kind of sense. I think it's genuine. Like maybe somebody forgot about it or it didn't affect it. They didn't think about it or didn't remember sometimes. And then you do have some individuals that think, okay, I'm going to roll the punches. I'm going to roll the dice. Maybe it doesn't affect me, right? You just don't know. So I don't. And there's been like, so in my client's defense, there was something they didn't know. Right. I guess there was something in the background they didn't know about. I'm like, oh my, and it's actually happened to me as well. Like there was obligations behind and I didn't even know I had. So they're like, okay, you have to, like, I forget what it was. It wasn't the last house we purchased. There was another house. So like, hey, you have to get rid of, or the other thing was like, the other thing, maybe not being naive, is there was a line of credit, what I had. They're like, okay, you have to pay this out. And I'm like, well, I can't afford to pay that out. Like, that's what happened to these guys. They had like, I don't know, these guys that are on the buy side, I think there was a line of credit, an obligation. Was a line of credit or something like that? They're like, okay, in order for you to qualify for this, you have to pay this out. And that's why the $100,000 came into effect for that.
Yeah, how big was the line of credit? Like $100K?
But I would assume that you disclose that, but who knows? Maybe it was somebody else. Maybe like, I don't know if my name's on my mom's list. I don't know if it's with my uncle. I don't know if it's with my cousin. Again, they don't know. Maybe their name is popping up somewhere, and which maybe they didn't remember. I'm like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. That can happen too. And it's kind of shitty in this market we're having. So I want to talk a little bit about.
Yeah, this was what I was going to lead you. So let's go in there.
All right. So where did you want to lead me to? Instead of me jumping ship,
I was going to ask you more about the mortgage side of things, because this has been happening frequently. Like
like I said in that video the other day.
Yeah, I read into a couple stories that have been happening specifically in like areas like Brampton and other cities. But before going into that, just to wrap up your side of things, I'll let you go from there.
Well, the reason why this is kind of happening, it's this type of market. We haven't seen this market in over 30 years, right? Like we are seeing the lowest activity we've seen in over 30 years. That just kind of tells you what's happening, right? Like the amount of sales we had last year. I'm just looking over here. So we had 5,600 sales in April, right? I'm assuming May has not been great as well. Just to put in perspective, last year was a slow year and we had 6,500 sales, but we had half the amount of listings, no, less than half. So last year there's like 12,500 listings, let's call it. We're almost at 28,000 listings. So less people purchasing and more inventory. So it kind of gives you a market. But we're also saying, but the reason why I'm saying not to panic is that the last 2 years, even though we've had these slow markets and lots of inventory, the underlying fundamentals of the Canadian real estate especially here in the GTA, have been sound. And how do I know that? It's like, well, the average price is still hovering between that 1.1. We've been flat for 2 years now, maybe more. That shows you right now, like people aren't dropping their pants. Like the market is not dropping. We're not seeing huge decrease in price. If you went to Economics 101 and you saw this, if you saw the small amount of sales, hence which is demand, and you saw the amount of inventory we have, which is supply, you'd assume that prices, and according to your prof, would have told you that prices would have dropped dramatically. But we're not seeing that. right? So again, that tells you, that goes back to our banking system, right? So our banking system, if you notice the last little bit, they are increasing fixed rate mortgages. Even though we're hoping having cuts in rates, well, fixed mortgages are going up. They're trying to, they're trying to mitigate some of the losses they're having. And that also affects qualification back to the mortgages, right? Now, because there was a lot of mortgage fraud, which we can get into what happened in 2021, right? And people are still feeling the effects of today. But anyway, my point is that we're in a slow market. That's why I say the market's interesting. But we're still having sales. Like 5,600 is not a lot. Like, so the first quarter, I think I said this last time, but our broker of record brought it to us, and he said, listen, he goes, we've had, was it 12,000 or 13,000 sales in the first quarter. And put in perspective, in 2021, we had over 33,000. That's a 60% reduction. So in the first quarter, we were seeing that in 1 month, right? And that's in 3. So that just kind of tells you where we are. So if you're seeing a lot of for sale signs now, inventory's up. That's why, right? Like the underlying fundamentals are still good, but we're still seeing, because of the mortgage laws, which are there to protect us, but it's not allowing people to afford a lot. And we're seeing deals fall through because of these really stringent mortgage laws.
And this is even over the past year, we've covered like the interest rates and everything the Bank of Canada is trying to do, and the incentives, and they're trying to motivate people. But
well, they shouldn't have screwed us for 4.5% increases in a year like that. Again, the thing is, I was pissed off with the Bank of Canada. I'll say it's, as a homeowner that's on a variable mortgage, first of all, they lied to us about telling us we're not going to go more than 1%. And remember, Trudeau said that as well. Still don't like the man. And they ended up hitting us with 4.5%. The problem with that is that anytime there's an increase in rates, historically, economists will tell you it takes anywhere from 18 to 24 months for it to take its full effect. Well, they just kept increasing. We're like, well, inflation's not going down yet. Inflation's not going down yet. And they were hammering us and hammering us. Now we're seeing the ill effects of that 4.5%. Guess what? 18 to 24 months later. And now they're trying to decrease the rates, and it's not helping. Again, it takes some time for the decreases now to take its effect. It's not going to happen overnight. So when this airs, I think next week, it's going to be on the Tuesday, the next day, so there's going to be an interest rate announcement, which is June 3rd. Sorry, June 3rd? Well, June 4th, right? For the Wednesday, it's June 4th. So there's going to be an interest rate announcement. So this is why economists are split. What are we going to do, right? Inflation right now just came out as a 1.7%, right? The problem with that is that a lot had to do with the stupid carbon tax, which we should have never have had. If they really wanted to talk about inflation back when Trudeau was in power, if they got rid of the carbon tax, which again, they're going to add it back in. But if they got rid of the carbon tax, that would have also helped with the inflation numbers. Now we're at a 1.7. What's the problem with that? Like, we're below the 2% threshold, which we want to be. They always want to be, anywhere from 1 to 3, sometimes 2 to 3%. Well, now that 1% sounds good, but the core inflation, which is the core products, are actually going up in price. So the only reason, if they had the carbon tax back in there, those numbers would have been higher than they were the previous month. So that's the problem, right? But on the flip side, we have an increase because of tariffs, potential tariffs to the US, and all of the sentiment going throughout all of Canada. We had unemployment increase to 6.9%. So economists are like, what the hell is happening here? We're in a recession. So what do? Do we decrease rates to help, bring up, to help with inflation? Sorry, would help with to help with the people, because we're worried about the recession. We need to have more money in the market because unemployment, people need a little bit of a break. Or are they concerned about inflation? Because in reality, that 1.7 is not 1.7. Inflation is actually increasing. So what are they going to do, the Bank of Canada? Right? Before the election, they're always talking they're going to cut. And then when last month or last Bank of Canada announcement, they saw the recession, like, we can't cut rates, and they kept it as is. So I firmly believe, I know they're not going to increase rates, but a lot of us need help, right? Like a lot of us, I'm saying, looking at my clients, we need that extra 0.25 point cut, 0.5% cut. I just don't feel like now, based on these numbers, they're going to do it.
So where do these clients of yours go from here? So
I have a couple of clients. I have one client that were also an issue too. Like, we had, this is why we don't always tell you to buy before you sell. And they're in a situation where they bought, we're supposed to close in a couple of weeks, and their house hasn't sold. And we've priced it. Like, we've tried the low thing. We're trying everything. The problem we're seeing also in this market now, anything under 1.5 is selling. It's in some areas, right? In areas of Toronto. And the reason why we're seeing the 1.5 as a threshold is because, last year they changed, or a year and a bit ago, they changed the minimum requirements for down payment. It used to be 1 million, now it's 1.5. So now under the 1.5, you can still put 10% down, right? You don't have to put. So that's why that threshold matters. They need to get a few $100,000 over that. So we're in a different market than them. And it's not just us. Nothing in their areas under 1.5 is selling. Over 1.5 is selling. So, this is not, unfortunately, this is not uncommon. So this is why this is a risk sometimes take. They got a ridiculous deal on the buy, but if you can't close on it, it becomes an issue. So this has happened before to me, and I've never seen this has happened as much in the last year. I've had buyers come to us and I have to negotiate and say, either can you do something on price? A lot of times sellers are no. I'm like, okay, can you give us an extension so we can get the money? And if you ask for an extension, sure, you're going to have to, as the buyer, whoever's asking the extension, so most of the time it's the buyer, it's going to cost you money. So we've been offering this to the other side, and we're saying, hey, we'll give you what we're paying for rent. The guy's not answering. He's not budging. I'm like, you realize if we can't close, this is going to go to court, right? Because you're going to want to keep my client's deposit. They're going to fight back saying, we're trying to close. We just need an extension. And I firmly believe if they get another month or two, it will sell at their number, right? It just, now the spring market hasn't really got to take in its full effect. It's taking longer. We're starting to see buyer sentiment the last couple of weeks, but it's not where it was. Okay. And so now we're trying to get a broker of record involved here, talk to their broker of record, because this is also a problem with hiring not a strong agent, because their agent's not communicating. And we're like, does he understand? Does your buyer who lives in China, does your seller who lives in China understand what's going to happen if we can't close? Does he understand as well, if we extend, he gets to keep, we've offered, he gets to keep X amount, I think $5,000 or $6,000 in his pocket. Even if we close, if we decide all of a sudden you extend to by 1 month and we sell and we close in a week, even if we close 3 weeks earlier from what we extended to, you still get to keep the money. So there's no loss to you. Like, if you have to go back on the market, it doesn't make sense, because, and especially now where there's more inventory, things aren't selling, you're going to sell less. And then you're going to have to sue my clients for the difference. Do you see that? That doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense for him to extend for even up to 3 months, because we feel that the market is starting to get momentum and it's not there yet, but he might as well extend it. He'll get to keep X amount of dollars in his pocket, and he probably could hit a better market if he has to go back on the market if my guys can't close, right? But sometimes what I'm telling you, when you're hiring an agent, you got to have an agent that can communicate, especially with the other agent and the lawyers and your broker of record. Somebody who can talk, somebody who responds. I called this guy twice yesterday. It just kept going to it didn't even go to his voicemail. He forwarded it to his brokerage. He doesn't talk to me. I text him, hey buddy, answer me. Did you get my message? Nothing. So we were trying to get the big guns in there, the lawyers involved, and our broker of records, and see if we can extend this to save the deal. And we're also doing everything on our side. We're just dropping the price right now until ridiculously low, try to get people in and try to hopefully get some activity so we can sell and say, listen, we are doing our part. Nobody expected the market, when they bought 3 months ago, nobody expected the market to nosedive to where it is today. And it just did. So it's there's no one to blame. Again, this is not a blame, he said, she said. It isn't a situation we're in. And they're probably the only clients, I think they're the only clients I have that actually bought first before they sold. And this is what happens.
Is it safe to say, for the first time in your career, you're feeling as if you have to keep pulling so many levers moving forward to get a deal done?
I'm stressed. It's like my days are long, very long. We're trying to pull things like that other deal we had. I have to figure out, I'm going to go show that property tonight, hopefully going to salvage a deal, because if that deal doesn't work, that affects another deal. So I have to get out of another mutual release out of that deal. My other guys have to sell. There's things happening left and right. So it's every single day we're trying stuff to see what's happening in the market. And we know we're priced right, because there's no, that's the funny thing. Even for my one guys in Brampton are selling, there's houses that are selling very similar. They have different attributes. So we know, but we're not priced incorrectly. So that's the most frustrating part about it. If somebody said to us like you're overpriced, I'm like no, they're coming like we just don't want it. It's in Brampton too. We don't have a basement apartment, and Brampton, like in the area they're in, they want basement apartments for multiple families. That also so sometimes it's like just a market, right? It is what it is, right? But that house, if we were selling in 2021, would have garnished 200,000-300,000 above what they're selling for today.
So it's more to say like it's like a change in attitude with buyers and sellers now.
Yeah. Buyers are just picky, and buyers just feel, well, I can back out of this house, which doesn't make sense. So if you're paying for a home inspection, because buyers pay for the home inspections, if you go see like 4 or 5 homes, that's $2,000. It could be $3,000 out of your pocket to put offers in and pull out. So I wouldn't suggest doing that.
Do you think it's ever going to go back to a place like where the buyer sentiment and seller sentiment, it's like back to a reasonable place? Because it seems like everybody's now, I'm not doing this, I'm not selling this.
The problem with right now,
you're caught in the middle and you have to deal with the stress.
I do. I think right now it's a buyer's market. So buyers they're finally pushing back because it was a seller's market for so long. But I feel like it's going to be more of an equilibrium market coming up, depending, especially certain house types. And I don't think the condo market's going to be in an equilibrium for at least a year and a half to 2 years, if not like so. That's why I say to a lot of my buyers or investors, I'm like, if you're looking to buy, especially now, condos are a good buy if for a long-term investment. You may buy now, they might go dip in like a year or so, but long-term investment, you should never be buying properties and try to flip them within a year or two. You won't make money.
Yeah, I remember you telling us back a couple episodes back.
We have to wrap up, right?
Yeah, last question. I was going to ask you, how are you managing the stress with everything?
I smoke a lot of cigars.
Shout out to Paulo.
Yeah, like the good news is like, so I work out every morning, which helps. I do a lot of praying, like I do ask God a lot for help. I do that. I do like my scotch. Unfortunately, I'm not getting plastered in that too, but it's nice. Like yesterday was a long day. Natalie made me tacos. So I came home around my first meal of the day was around 7:00, and I had a beer with it, and I had a couple of beers, light beers. Like I had Michelob Ultra because it's light. I don't feel, but it just knocked me out. Right. I still had to work for a couple more hours, and then, we were in bed. So try to get 7 hours of sleep and then start the process again. You need your sleep because without sleep, that affects everything.
And it's great you have the team as well too. You got Lori, you got Ku Coach, you got...
Yeah, we just hired other people. We got Jude is in there too, and now Orsita just joined us as well. So yeah, so a lot of my buying agents, we're good there. We have Wojtek is a partner. Well, not partner. He's associate like Ku Coach, and then Elise obviously in the background helps a lot. Like she's doing a lot of the work today when we're doing these podcasts.
Easy. Thanks for the great storytelling and giving us an insight on what's going on. If you have any more questions in the market regarding buying and selling, DC's information will be in the description, in the YouTube description. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, you should be able to see his email address and also the Instagram handle if you want to DM, if that's your best mode of communication. And any last words in regards to people who are in this market space looking to make a decision?
So first off, if you're a seller, don't panic. Like, listen, it's as long as you have good marketing, your house looks good. The last piece of the puzzle is price. And sometimes you just got to wait on it. Like I had 4 conditional deals this week, and some of them have been on the market for 3 months, and we got close to what they wanted. So it has to be patient. As buyers, don't dick around sellers. And if you are going to hammer them for price, you can, I guess it's part of the process, but understand on the other side, they're human beings. They also have obligations, right? So, it's good to make some money, and then like if you're helping them out, but I also say depending on their situation, sometimes you're helping the people out by purchasing. So know that as well. But you also have to, as buyers, sometimes sellers have to get to a certain price point in order for them to sell. They're not being greedy. Maybe they have a lot of times they have other obligations, and this is happening over and over. I'm seeing this over and over again. There's a certain price point my sellers can only get to, and that's why they're not accepting. They're not being greedy. They need to be able to parlay that money into something else. So take that into consideration as well. They're not everyone's trying to be greedy, especially if it's below the market value.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for subscribing. We've had amazing growth the past couple of months. We couldn't do it without you. And we appreciate you joining us on the ride. And we'll see you in the next episode next week at the same time. All right. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.